Okay, it looks like we are recording. Fantastic. Yeah, Owen. So thanks for sort of last minute speaking to me. That's fantastic. If you don't mind, just off camera, there we're speaking about regenerative agriculture and your perspective on thriving was the word you use in terms of ecosystems and yourself. Could you just explain that a bit more for me? What does that mean to you?
So, as I was saying earlier on, my kind of statement of purpose, the thing that really kind of drives me is this idea of kind of thriving naturally. So, to me, that is restoring ecosystem function in a way that kind of brings about my own personal growth and flourishing at the same time. And the way that I've concluded that I can achieve that really is through ecology, agroecology, and regenerative agriculture, and sort of using any skills I have to really help bring about a kind of my own coexistence with nature, but also people's collective coexistence and continuity with the natural patterns that we find, within nature and its ecosystems.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like how you sort of drew a connection there between your own personal development and the role you do professionally. Um, is that something you factored in terms of career choice and the things you do? Is that was that a priority for you to feel what would make you fulfilled and what your skills are in this world? Is that the route you went down?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm very purpose driven. I'm just very much driven by the why of certain things, and
Yeah,
I,
me too.
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of us in this kind of regenerative space are, and we can't look the other way. We can't not look at the long term. We can't not see patterns. We see them and it sticks, and we just need to do something about them. I think I get that from really everyone in regen
Yeah,
who's genuinely into it. And yeah, that's very much me. And thanks to using a holistic decision making process, I've kind of written that on my wall. In fact, I just read that on my wall actually. That statement of purpose as a kind of a reminder that I can change. I can change it, but a reminder of what I actually um, want for myself. So when I do, for example, take a job, career choice, or something like that, I can actually look at it and think, does this fit in with that? And then you
mm,
just can't really go wrong with that, because you don't have to rigidly stick to, your little statement purpose. You can change that, but as long as just having one, it really helps me stick with it.
yeah, yeah. I really like that. I might have to copy that idea. Having that down filters then everything you do in terms of career choice, or you could go as far as absolutely everything day to day through your life. If you had a statement that was defined enough to live your life by, then it's really a filtration process of, does this action or choice go with that statement, and if not, you can pretty reasonably count it out. That's an interesting thing, and it is very very holistic management based. Um, I sense you have you trained in holistic management?
Yes, I trained in holistic management about 2 years ago with 3LM,
Yeah.
the UK and Ireland savoury hub, and it's provided some clarity to me. I am a I am quite I say a polymath. I'm interested in lots of different things, but it's kind of dressing up a way of saying I'm quite easily distracted in some senses, and it really is
Me too,
quite
completely.
just having that kind of context written down that you can then align with. It helps you actually make a decision, and not just for the sake of making a decision, but actually give you confidence with it. And like, okay, this really is in
Mm,
tune with what I actually want and the quality of life I've described and things like that. Yeah, that'll do it. You know, um, so
mm.
just that alone um, has been a really good guide just for my kind of own personal uh, sort of journey, really.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I think it's something that's obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but it's something that could be so beneficial to every style of every business and every industry, and that's something that is explained a bit more in depth in holistic management training about, how broadly applicable it is to not just agricultural and ecological industries, but all sorts of industries can use aspects of holistic management training in that. And I think that statement of purpose and context is the starting point. The way I heard it described through I can't remember the who it is now, but it's the Ranching for Profit School. That's an American based one, and a chap there said that if he asked you to get in the car with him and start driving, you'd ask where you're going. The first question you'd ask where you're going. So he said that in terms of every business should have that mission statement, that statement of purpose, and everybody can get on board. Back to holistic management, 3LM. I've worked with I was trained with same people, Sheila.
Mm-hmm.
I've only done about half of it so far, so I'm aiming to get that completed. What was that like for you, that journey? Was that about 3 days of training, or a bit more?
I did it online during the later stages of lockdown, so early 2021.
Right.
And so it was I think it was, I don't know, it was maybe 8 weeks or something like that. And I would stay up after a night shift until about 9 a.m. for it to start. And I would have no regrets. I would feel groggy but energized at the same time, because I knew I was heading in some sort of right direction. It was really my first step, and I just took it, and it just felt so energizing that I almost forgot that I'd just done a night shift a few hours before and stayed up.
Yeah, that's so true. When I managed to, I don't live too far away from where they were offering some training, and so I managed to drive there and back it was sort of a commutable distance. But same thing for me, first day of taking some of that training, the drive back was like, feel so energized, even though it's a heavy day of learning. Almost having to pull over at the side of the car and really just write things down on paper and think about things. But I think that's a good sign. At any time in life when you've got that sort of energy, you're onto a path that you should be.
Yes, yeah, no, I think that's certainly true. Just that spring in your step of, I know what I'm doing. It's just
Yeah.
it's particularly big, as I say, for people that really are quite driven by the why of something. And I think that's really
What's
what it appeals
your
to.
Yeah, yeah, totally. What's your if possible, it's probably a bit of a loaded question, but would you be able to sort of define holistic management, or how you use holistic management, and what that might mean to somebody that's never heard that term ever?
To me, holistic management is a way of managing resources in a way that, I would say, in a way that considers the whole interconnected nature of everything we manage, and checked each decision through a set of questions that make sure that you are in line with your own whole context and the whole context of the kind of biological meta-organism that is planet Earth. It's kind of a way of really confusingly describe it to somebody who thinks it's probably about mob grazing or something like that. But there really
Yeah,
isn't a
yeah.
super simple way to describe it. I guess, a way of managing and making decisions that take into account the whole would be like a real standard kind of definition. But
Yeah, I think that's right, and it's almost that. I think that kind of standard definition is almost the best one to use, and then it opens the door to explain more if people are interested. But at its very heart, that's all we're working with.
yes, yeah.
How are you bringing in elements of that holistic management and that sort of mindset into your professional work now?
So for one, it takes into account my career decisions, which jobs to apply for and take and which ones not to. Because you can kind of, from your quality of life and statement of purpose, you can then further narrow that down into more specific things you can be doing, specific qualifications you can gain or whatever to get you the kind of skills that will give you that kind of quality of life and things. So I use it as really kind of like the North Star to originate from, and then you can narrow things down into specific actions and practices. So for me, as I say, that really is it's what job I work, where I go, and what I do. That's kind of that's how it helps me in my career, just to sort of checking in with my own context.
Yeah, yeah, and all very, such massively important things, as you mentioned, where you go, where you work, who you work with, not things to be taken for granted and or blinded by money or just ease of situation or whatever.
Mm,
There's deeper things. Then it sounds like we're similar in the sense of feeling that sense of purpose and asking why,
yeah,
and getting distracted easy as well. But I think something, I don't know whether you're the same. Something I've started to use that feeling as is like an indicator of the direction I should point myself in. And not just thinking I'm lazy or thinking I'm easily distracted, and it's that's just part of us, and we'll use that as a tool for moving forward.
yeah, no, definitely. And as you say, I think it can to sort of develop on that. I think it can stop you from kidding yourself into trying to convince yourself you want something else. That being said, it's important, particularly at quite a young age, to be open to changing your statement of purpose because you know
Mm,
people do reinvent themselves, and I'm only 24, and there'll be my statement of purpose won't be identical in probably in a year or two, never mind 10 years. So it's that's one
mm.
thing about holistic context that I will say is that the idea of a the idea of having one and just not really changing it would be something that's more geared to, I'd say, older people, really. Not that holistic management never really says not to change your statement of purpose, but it's always, I think, quite important to be aware, particularly as a young person, not to kind of glue yourself to who you think you are. So always look at that statement of purpose and quality of life and think, actually, I wrote this 2 years ago. Is this who I am? Is this what I want? So that's something to
Mm.
definitely also factor in. I think if you're kind of trying to make decisions in your life holistically at an age where you're actually also still finding out who you are.
Yeah, yeah, that is so true. On a personal level, life is such a complex thing. You can go in so many directions. I think for defining a context as a business, it's probably a bit easier to really set down. This is what we do. This is the way we make money. This is the way in which we want to ethically and whatever else. And that might be easier because 5 p.m. comes and you go home, and then you just have to worry about your personal life, and then you can come back to the business the next day. But personal life, like you said, it is a feedback loop, and not to be too nerdy about the holistic stuff, but that is the holistic feedback loop of replanning and reassessing
Mm.
constantly if you can. Yeah. What do you see in your role professionally and the organizations you're connected to or have worked with? What do you see their mindset as being guided by or limited by?
Um, well, I think that most people I know and most people generally, they actually mean well and they want good things. And if only people were to kind of use a process that keeps them in check with their own values and actually holds them account to their own values and ultimately, include the sustainability kind of checks, there'd be a lot more consensus and there'd be a lot less unnecessary a confrontation between parties that actually probably want pretty much the same world. And it's often just a problem of language, communication, and clarity, which I think can very much be in part helped by individuals drawing up and organisations kind of drawing up that kind of holistic context.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. It's almost like some people or some organizations, like you say, often want the same thing. Um, but with the limitations of our language and our communication and our egos getting in the way and all sorts, we never arrive at that same destination, and we end up arguing and disagreeing about everything in the meantime. Um, so, in your space of ecology and soil health and policy making, what's your give me a feel of that space at the minute? Are you optimistic about the future for that, or what do you see going on?
Yes, I am enthusiastic for several reasons. One of them being the kind of ripping away of traditional agricultural subsidies, which provided kind of perverse incentives to overstock the land and do not take in long-term considerations. Um, with the overthrowing of that, and at least the attempt of replacing it with a system that kind of puts value on nature via natural capital or subsidies or whatnot, we can have a system that actually puts a figure to the value of nature. And I think that is overall a promising thing in its rawest concept, although it's often executed quite badly in practice. And I think that because um, I think the people that make the real key decisions and have the most influence over how things are managed and land is managed do ultimately speak the language of money at the end of the day. And if we are to, if we're to turn this around, then we do need to some degree, translate the value of nature into money. And I think that's part of why I'm enthusiastic. The second is that people are becoming more and more aware in day-to-day life about the nuances of the of what constitutes a regenerative diet and lifestyle. And I have a deep kind of belief that eventually the truth is just going to worm its way through, and people will realise the kind of the way things can be, and then the
Yeah,
resistance really. I feel the resistance already kind of slipping, in that I've been in the space for 2.5 years, and in that time alone, the regenerative agriculture space in the UK has soared. It must have quintupled in 2.5 years. So yeah, a lot of good signs, and I'm very hopeful.
yeah, yeah. It's nice to hear somebody optimistic, certainly. Um, and I'm the same. I get fun made out of me for using the phrase that the truth will prevail. But I'm with you. I think it will. And it's almost a case of hopefully not if but when, and sooner the better with all of these things. You mentioned that you see practices being executed badly despite good intentions. What does bad execution look like in a lot of these cases?
Well, I mean, typically, it will look like heavy and unoptimized and unnecessary soil disturbance. So I specify that because some level of soil disturbance is good and everything like that. Heavy chemical disturbance to soil, pesticides, things like that, compaction of soil, reduction of biodiversity and depletion of natural assets, either purposely or not, and the kind of complete restructuring and destruction of the water cycle, which I think is criminally underrated in its importance and how it contributes to climate change and
Mm,
biodiversity. So they're kind of the main ones, but then
yeah,
that manifests itself in human health too. Those pesticides don't go away very quickly, and they end up in food and water, and yeah, this creates a lot of issues down the line, which is quite concerning if you think about it for a while.
Yes, yeah, that's a very good point about the water cycle. I think I wonder if you agree. I think we have had a disproportionate focus on the carbon cycle in recent years,
Hmm.
and it looks like you might agree. Could you explain a bit more to anybody that might listen about the water cycle and the importance of it?
So there's a scientist who explains this better called Walter Janer, I believe is how you say it, Janer. He is a climate scientist from Australia, and he posits that we are vastly underestimating the role of the water cycle in regulating Earth's temperatures in the kind of in the zone in the kind of biosphere zone where everything actually lives. And this is because of the fact that water is, I believe, around 85% of the greenhouse gas effect in terms of because of its water vapors um, sheer kind of prevalence in the atmosphere. It provides something like 85% of the insulative effect of Earth's heat. And he posits that it is humans' destruction of the water cycle, which is at least as responsible for climate change as the disruption of the carbon cycle. Um, and he believes this because he essentially puts forward that we have created vast areas of bare ground and devegetated a lot of areas. And when the sun comes down on this, you get the incident solar radiation, kind of bounces off the ground and pushes clouds away and heats. And it kind of, it's bouncing heat back as well, and that's keeping the water in a haze, which is highly insulated. But when we revegetate these areas, the plants, for one, they reduce the incident solar radiation. So like they absorb when it comes in, when the UV comes in, it not as much bounces back. It kind of takes it in. And secondly, the plants release these kind of spores, and they act as what he calls precipitation nuclei, and they bring these haze kind of particles together to form bigger droplet sizes, which form clouds. And clouds are cooling. They're white. They dissipate. They bounce heat back out, and they rain, which cools the air. And essentially, by regenerating vast areas of land, whether it's reforestation, uh, regreening the desert with livestock, wetlands, mangroves, whatever it is, are bringing more green, living, thriving ecosystems that are diverse back onto the land. We actually we can actually restart these water cycles that are initiated by nature, and
Mm.
and yeah, so I also think so. Obviously, that gets some controversy, because people think it's in conflict with this idea that we are polluting our planet purely kind of with the imbalance of carbon and carbon and nitrous oxide. However, I really don't think there's any need for a conflict there because ultimately the solutions to the carbon imbalance and the water cycle disruption are one and the same, and that's ecosystem restoration.
Mm. That's an excellent explanation. Yeah, you're right. No matter, we can't get too tied up in the weeds of the problems because hopefully a lot of people are in agreement, myself and yourself included, that the cure to a lot of the problems will look the same in most situations. It's so interesting how it's such a nuanced, complex thing, especially I think the water cycle.
Mm.
Even what you were explaining about, you managed to list off, about 3 or 4 ways in which correcting the water cycle has a beneficial effect on the greenhouse effect. Um, the one about the plants releasing spores, that is just the most fascinating thing.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I remember hearing that and being pretty thrown off, thinking plants really do create rain. That's insane to
Yeah,
me.
Yeah, so forests will get more rain because they're they're almost asking for more rain.
Yeah, yeah, they are sending
Yeah,
little fungal spores, and it's how those fungal spores, and it's not just that; it's other things. I think it's pollen as well and stuff, and that's their way of spreading. They'll rain down somewhere else, and they'll be transported in that raindrop. So our rain isn't just water either. It's all sorts of inoculants. It's fungus, pollen, all these things.
yeah, yeah. That is just so endlessly fascinating. It's
Mm.
as we both understand, nature is so complex. We're never going to fully understand how everything links together and works together. Um, I wonder how closely are you working with the land exactly in your work? Are you day to day out there getting your hands dirty?
Pretty much day to day, yeah. I'm sampling soil pretty much every day. Most days that I work, I do that, and so that's really good to get your hands on it and see how soil is and how good it is or isn't. So yeah, that's really good. And previously, I've worked a lot on regenerative farms across the UK, so I've had my kind of fair share of experience with that, considering how not long I've been into it. So yeah, I've seen it. I'm kind of doing it, and that's really the best way to be. Is just to get in on it and just start.
Yeah, yeah. That must be interesting. What are you finding? It's like having that context of knowing how farms work and how farmers are managing their soils, and then getting into the sort of depth that you now understand about ecology and soil health. Does it? Do you sort of cast your mind back and cringe, or do you just find it interesting?
Um, yeah, I mean, you learn a lot for certain. You do learn a lot on these farms. But you know, if you're coming from the right place, you should never really be embarrassed about not having it right because none of us can be right by definition. None of us have the answer. We're all wrong about something, and all you can do is learn basically. So, and you can only do that by going out and doing it. So, yeah, just anybody who's thinking about going out and getting some experience and learning about it, just go to a farm that's kind of switching to regenerative or is regenerative already, and just do it and talk to them and just throw yourself into it because that's what I did and I don't regret it.
Hmm. What do you think farmers need to do in terms of being inviting to the sort of people you mentioned and really helping to cultivate that sort of atmosphere?
I would say that there's not really anything to really say to farmers as such. Um, I'd always encourage the drawing up of a holistic context and things like that. But ultimately, I think farming needs an injection of youth. It needs that kind of invigoration of youthful creativity, energy, and mental elasticity to actually
Mm,
survive. But currently, I think that's not too feasible because of the relatively low profit margins of farming full stop, particularly regenerative farming. And if we were to increase that, that incentivizes people to get on the land, whether it's buying land or land sharing agreements, share farming, anything like that. That would encourage way more people to get out there, and that would just put that youth back in the soil. That would put people in charge of land who were willing to change and also just to just be able to do things. I mean, the average age of a farmer is what, so I don't know, 58, 60 something, in the
yeah, it's
UK.
up there.
And honestly, when I'm 60 something, I'm not gonna, I can't guarantee I'm gonna be right on the cutting edge of holistic philosophy and farming practices. You almost can't really expect it of everyone, particularly when they've been told these seemingly completely contradictory narratives for years and kind of been in the end of various different things and they've been paid and incentivized with subsidies to do all these things, and now they're saying it's all wrong. It's it's quite it's not an easy space for farmers, but yeah, I think
Mm.
once the profit margins are there on farm and you get that youthful energy in, you're really going to catalyze the kind of emergence of a regenerative agricultural system.
Yeah. Do you think the regenerative agriculture movement is going to carry, some youth into the industry uh, naturally, or is it? I'm trying to I'm trying to think with the profit margin aspect that you spoke about.
Mm.
Um, how does the industry avoid making that just a greed thing and just sort of going back into the days of subsidies, farmers just getting paid for being farmers? How do we sort of move through that and make it a sustainable industry for people to make a living in, but move through this regenerative movement as we need to?
So I think when I say I want farms to be more profitable, um, I mean genuinely the farm is, we need to have it so that the products that the farm produces, ideally not just the indirect benefits, not just the natural capital, but ideally the food produce itself should be able to pay for livelihoods on the farm. Families to be living on farms, passing it to the next generations, communities of volunteers and people that live on the farm. Because really, people is exactly what makes a regenerative farm work. The more people you have, generally, the better. Um, the more nuanced everything can become, and just the more fantastic place it can become. They're just the best human ecosystem I think you can imagine. Um, so, so to me, profitability looks like lower inputs. It looks like at the minute, really, it's a lot of other side income sources like camping and selling courses and hosting things. And I think they're completely legitimate considering the circumstance. But yeah, really, the produce ideally should be paying for it, and if not that, then as I say, natural capital payments hopefully will become a more equitable, liquid kind of market system, where we can actually fairly reward the stewards on the ground for the kind of natural assets that they are regenerating with their practices.
Mm. Yeah, it's a real balance, isn't it? Trying to keep farms as farms and feeding our nation and providing livelihoods for the people that make food by valuing the food as it should be valued, and equally taking care of this natural capital aspect that you speak about. Um, the balance of that is going to be tricky as we move forward, and we're seeing it now with the grant thing options that are becoming available. Um, dare I say it, I think the government are doing quite a good job so far of striking that balance between valuing food security, but also valuing biodiversity and other ecological factors. What do you think it's looking like in terms of the sustainable farming incentives that are coming out now?
I think, obviously, I think it needs work, but it's certainly a good start. The fact that we're even here is a good thing, and it's important to sort of have some gratitude for that, at least. But when you say there's a balance between feeding the country and looking after ecosystems, it's not really a term I use because if you imagine balance, you've got a weigh scale and two things are balanced against each other. It implies the two are opposing forces, but I think it's more about alignment with biodiversity and rural communities and producing food because we can't we can't have regenerative agriculture without rural communities, and we can't have rural communities in the long term without regenerative agriculture, nor can we produce any food in the long term unless we are to regenerate our ecosystems. So if uh, if people realize that it's a case of realizing the alignment between those two and not some kind of trade-off or balance between nature and human systems, then we're going to start to make a lot of progress in that kind of in that space, really.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I do agree. Where do you think the consumer comes into this? Do you think the consumer is the most important aspect in terms of pushing this forward, or is it got to be top down?
I think they are. I think they probably are the most important, actually. Um, the customer, should I say, more than the consumer. You know, the consumer kind of sometimes implies a kind of brainless relationship, but consumers are people, they're customers, and people can come to their own decisions about things. And with the right education and awareness, people's values change over time, and the value of good food, local, sustainable food that helps their own community. I think a lot of people will pay more for it, enough so that the profit margins are there for regenerative farms to continue. So
Mm,
ultimately, everything at the very end of the day does come down to everyday people, because we do enable by our purchases the system that we live in to some degree. Now, you can't, obviously there's more nuance to it than that. Some people are kind of have to buy kind of cheaper food, and people are swayed by these big influence of kind of faulty information from people that aren't so regenerative. There's all sorts of nuances to say. The people at the top actually influence the people at the bottom, which then re-supports them, and that's true. But at the end of the day, people are individuals. People are also responsible for monitoring those kind of forces, those biases that might sway us in a direction that's not conducive to truth. And yeah, it's ultimately
mm.
on everyone, top or bottom, of whether you're at the top or at the bottom, to consciously align yourself with the world you want to live in. And that's, again, that can kind of link back to
Mm.
forming a holistic context or something like that.
Yeah, I was just about to say that because, as you were speaking, I really agree with the point about the biases and the sort of false information that is there to the customer and just the general public,
Mm.
and how hard it is to make an informed decision around diet choices or food purchases and anything like that. But time and time again, I think you're right in that we do come back to that sort of context, understanding context, and even as you first spoke about having a personal context, if the public in general starts to level up how much they care about health, landscape health, more and more of these things, eventually that purchase choice should come naturally, shouldn't it? Despite any bias, despite any false information that's coming from the top down,
Mm.
if they start to cultivate that sort of feeling in their family, in themselves, in their communities, then it should take care of itself, I think. But I don't know. Is that a long way off? Do you think,
No,
or do you think we're getting there on that?
no, I think we are getting there on that, and I think ultimately it's true that one has to be their own kind of guide through all of this, and it really is kind of a case of really only doing what you can, and most people can only just make their decisions based on the information they have. And it's not that I'm
Mm,
saying it's only the consumers and the top down are just people at the top are just there to answer their wishes. It's a two-way kind of dialectical thing. But um, as if you are a consumer, and I'm a consumer out at that point really, um, you can only do what you can do. So it's good to assess what you can do for that very reason, because it's all you can do.
mm. Yeah, yeah, and at the very first level, it does come down to, like we say, decision, and everybody, hopefully, in a free country, has the chance to make votes or make petitions, or ideally, I like to say, vote with the pound, i.e., as you said, purchase where you want to purchase, and make a vote that way for what you think is the right decision.
Hmm. And that's the language that the most influential
Yeah.
decision makers on this planet speak: money.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Do you think we're overall too clouded with money still in the agriculture space, or is it are people sort of leaning more towards ethics and that sort of thing?
I think you can't really have one without the other, because an ethical farm that doesn't pay for itself is not ethical, because it goes out of business and then somebody else takes over the land. So I think we people are greedy, whether they're greedy with money or greedy with land or whatnot. People can be greedy, should I say, actually. Um, and
Mm.
and money is just a tool like anything else, is what I'm saying. And money is essentially, at the end of the day, is a fungible token and a store of value. And we can use that as a tool for wealth building and acquisition to funnel into fulfilling our holistic contexts, or we can use it for kind of perverse means, disingenuous kind of purposes. So I don't know if we are too focused on money as such, or maybe we're not focused enough on the real sources of wealth. Because if we had a more holistic definition of what wealth looks like, functioning ecosystems, for example, then all of a sudden money can become your friend. You know, if true wealth is represented
Mm.
by money at any point, then I think we should just continue to get closer to that as we can. Then all of a sudden, profitability, capitalism, all these things, they become your friend. Not that it's necessarily
Yeah,
an
that's
instant change.
yeah, yeah. That's right. When it stems from the right place and maybe a regenerative system, then money and capitalism and any sort of scale, it can only be a good thing as long as it stems from a healthy place, not a greedy place or not a disingenuous place. Like you said, it's money's a tool and a very powerful and attractive one to everybody. So it should be used as such. I'm curious, Owen, on this matter, any good book recommendations?
Well, I mean, holistic management is like uh, by Alan Savory is like the starter place, really. That is just kind of your North Star, really, to read through that. And they've also got a handbook that's more for the specifics of planning grazing, but that's
Mm,
really good.
yeah,
And in terms of regenerative agriculture, there's lots out there. There's Dirt to Soil, For the Love of Soil, and there's lots of different ones out
mm,
there that really get the
yeah.
point
For
in.
the that's Nicole Masters, isn't it?
For the Love of Soil is, yeah, and Dirt to Soil is by Gabe Brown.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nicole Masters. I think I've read that. Dirt to Soil. Sorry, For the Love of Soil. I think once through, but really it might take a few more times through because the depth in that just amazed me.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's the exact same with me. I'm going to have to read that probably twice more to read that. I've already read Dirt to Soil twice, and there's still things that I think will come new to me. And the same goes for holistic management, really.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a value in that really. Having, I mean, I do tend to buy quite a lot of books. It's like a vice really. But really, I should reread the books that resonate with me and pick up more things because I've probably gone too quickly.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, yeah,
If you only found time for it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll carve out a bit more time. Um, Speaking of time, I won't take too much more of yours, Owen. Thanks so much for talking to me. I think that was really interesting.
No, thanks for having me on. I believe this is my first podcast, actually, so thank you. I doubt it'll be my last, but thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll make an episode. We'll make a part two or something, so we can keep it going.
Yeah, no, that sounds excellent. Right, cool.
Yeah,
Thank you
perfect.
very much.
Thank you. We'll call off there.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Bye bye.